A tale of two halves in some way in Indiana tonight. The Bucks absolutely sizzling in the first half, and then perhaps a few nervous moments and some hacker Giannis. We haven't seen that a lot over the years, but it certainly was a tactic tonight from the Pacers. We're going to break down this game. Giannis had 41. Khris Middleton looked very good in his only 15 minutes that he's allowed on the court, but there is plenty to discuss. So let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and sometimes on the weekend like today. And alongside me, the founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day. And this is just a perfect example of why you should be subscribed for the podcast, which is free to do, by the way, because when we decide the podcast on the weekend, when Giannis drops 41 and we know we're going to do a post-game show, if you're subscribed and have the notifications on, then you'll know as soon as the pod drops. The Bucks beat the Pacers, another game where they score a whole heap of points and also give up a whole lot. 141 to 131. The Bucks were sizzling in the first half. 85 points, which I believe I saw on Twitter, Frank, was their highest ever half total on the road. It looked like it was going to be an easy night at the office. They're up by 31 points at one point. And then all of a sudden we're doing Hacker Shack, Hacker Giannis with 3 minutes to play. I wasn't overly anxious about this one, Frank. I thought that they were going to pull it out. But Giannis, I think at the time, was 1 for 8 at the line. He was dominant everywhere else. But the Bucks needed him to step up at the free throw line, and he did that. And he finishes the night with 41 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, which feels low. I felt like he was dishing the ball everywhere in the first half. But that's some good clutch stuff at the free throw line because they needed it.
Yeah, and what was it, 150 to 130 earlier in the week against the Pistons. Another just sort of like, hey, we're going to blow the doors off. I don't want to say the Pacers aren't a bad team. I mean, they're missing, obviously, Halliburton, so this is not the full version of their squad. But, a team that you obviously expect to beat given the circumstances. And Bucks just kind of same formula, right? Boat race them in the first half. And then, ultimately, the Pistons never got as close as the Pacers did tonight. But, Lisa kept mentioning on the broadcast how many comeback wins they've had. And, unfortunately, this is the NBA, right? So, like, teams get hot. And I think the other piece, too, obviously, is the Bucks. First half was just a work of art, ball movement, the shooting, everything was just, the energy was just awesome. And the bounce scoring was great. I think let's talk about Khris Middleton, right? He can't be blamed for any of the second half issues because he was barely played in the second half. I thought the thing that was most encouraging in the first half was just the kind of diversity of ways that he was scoring. It wasn't just like, oh, he knocked down some open threes. He was getting to kind of his spots. He had a couple of turnaround jump shots, a couple of #TooSmall GIF type shots, which, he did not have I don't think he had one in the first couple of games here, getting to like the little turnarounds in the post. And he had a few of those and also just got to the paint a number of times. And, I think, to me, that's the big question with Khris is, not that he's ever been a prolific paint scorer, but when he's using the threat of his jump shot, when he's using the threat of the pass, working in pick and rolls, and he's able to get close to the basket. And, we saw him get like close for a short little leaner. We saw him get to the paint, throw a little pump fake, draw contact for an and one. I think he might have had another play where he got to the basket for a layup in transition as well. So that's what I like to see, because again, that makes me feel a little bit more like, okay, he's physically feeling fit. You talked about, looked a little bit svelter maybe than he was at the time of his first comeback. So that's obviously, as much as Giannis having a monster night, we just sort of become numb to that. But Khris, looking more like Khris Middleton here. We've seen kind of these little bits and pieces of it, but the sooner we can see this version of Khris kind of, again, every night, that's obviously going to be a huge thing, because that's the whole thesis of the Bucks. And I think that first half, obviously, you could think the Twitter reaction, everybody was saying like, this is the fully operational Death Star, the of the Bucks that we came into this season hoping for with the ball movement. Pat Connaughton was shooting the lights out again. Got to get an early Pat Connaughton mention in tonight, Kane, because I forgot to do it the other night, and I'm a huge Pat Connaughton fan. I've been saying he should keep starting even when Chris comes back as the fifth starter. So yeah, I mean, I think again, just especially for this team, given the way the offensive struggles have been such a theme through the first half of the season. And, we talked about it. Justin had that stat, 19 threes per game for 10 games. And tonight, especially in the first quarter, 9 for 15 in the first quarter. I think I don't know if they had 13 or 16 in the first half. You'd have to look, tell me what did they finish from three tonight? Again, like maybe not.
41.9%, 18 for 43. So another volume shooting night, as you pointed to, a lot of them in the first half.
Yeah, and 18 of 43. I mean, that's average. That's actually slightly below average in terms of total makes over the last 10 games. But the percentage obviously slightly above where they've been. They've been over 40%. So, this stuff is streaky. Remember early in the season when the Celtics were shooting 43% from three as a team for the first 20 games, and it was like, oh, the Boston Celtics have the greatest offense in the history of the NBA, and I remember listening to Brian Scalabrine on the Low Post. He was like, oh, well, Rob Williams is going to come back, and these guys are, I don't know, maybe they can keep doing this. And Zach was kind of like, yeah, they're not going to shoot this well forever, and they're going to come back down to earth, and they were trying to act like they're just going to be a 120 offensive rating team all year. And sure enough, they're third or fourth now in the league. They're not even the first in the league. So stuff is, offense, defense, stuff ebbs and flows. You're going to have, stretches where you're unlucky in terms of defense, right? 3-point shooting variance. And then you're going to have stretches where maybe you don't shoot the ball as well from three, which the Bucks were that team for quite a while. And now we're seeing the mean reversion kick in. And certainly with a guy like Pat Connaughton, Pat struggled really for the first, whatever it was, 6 weeks or so, maybe longer, after he came back. But he's obviously looked great the past couple games, and in general has been much better of late. So yeah, I mean, just really nice to see. And Joe Ingles, again, you look at his numbers, they've kind of backed up. I think he came into this game shooting 36% from three on the year and 56% true shooting. And I don't know what he did tonight. I think he hit another 1 or 2 threes tonight as well. So just in general, good to see the offense perking up, and with Chris in particular, just having that guy who's not the point guard but able to make good decisions and again, be a threat to score, be a threat to pass, make the right reads. It'll take a little bit, right, for him to get kind of fully up to his rhythm, but just very nice to see that. And again, second half, second half was not what we wanted in terms of kind of the overall kind of completeness of this game, right? I think if they win by 25-30, you look at this and say, hey, really nice job. 4 quarters, great. But, again, Indiana can get hot from three. Guys like Hield at all. Turner had a, by the way, my dog is here. This is my dog here. He's agitating. He's agitating Dudley.
Big smile. Though.
Yeah. Well, he's a Bucks win. That's right, Dudley? Yeah. Okay. He's just nudging my setup here. But by the way, my daughter turned 5 yesterday, and Dudley down. She's working on a Lego roller coaster downstairs, and I spent much of the last 24 hours working on that. My wife is now taking a shift while I do this podcast, so that's why I'm podcasting not downstairs, which is where I usually do it. Instead, I'm podcasting with this big galoot here, who's just also can't get over the fact that the Bucks won a basketball game. But yeah, so just fun to watch the offense start to perk up. And again, I mean, obviously defensively not altogether impressive. First half much better than the second half, but this kind of happens psychologically. When you start scoring so easily, I think you kind of feel like, we're just going to be able to score all game, and you take your foot off the gas. You don't lock down the way you necessarily need to. And ultimately though, it didn't feel as frustrating because it's not like they just blew it all in a 4 or 5 minute span. Kind of Indiana chipped away, got it to 7 or 8 points a number of times in the fourth quarter, but the Bucks were always able to answer. And as you said, I mean, Giannis, disaster from the foul line through 3 quarters, even gets a 10-second violation to put him at 1 for 9, but then, does kind of buckle down a fair bit. Over his last 9, he makes 6. So, okay, good enough. And as you said, I think when they were going to the Haka, he made enough to to make them stop doing that. And then, he also had that really nice knifing finish past Turner in the last couple minutes for his 40th and 41st points that kind of put it away. So not a work of art, but again, I think offense has been the problem this year, and I think certainly over the past couple weeks we're seeing a lot of examples of the Bucks offense looking more like we expected it to.
Yeah, 150 points and 141 points in the same week is pretty nice. To tell you what else is pretty nice, that's FanDuel, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with a $150 free bet guaranteed. Well, it's $150 in free, $150 in free bets actually. But that's when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. And as I mentioned yesterday, you can bet on all kinds of different things at the NBA championship, individual awards, when LeBron is going to pass Kareem. And as I said yesterday, the game against the Bucks plus 230, the second in the line of betting there for when LeBron's going to pass Kareem. So if you're interested in that, you can do that. It seems to be popular thinking that LeBron is going to do it against the Bucks. So this is all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. So when I was looking at, as you were talking about the 3-point stuff, and it's hilarious because, I mean, we've obviously discussed this all season long, where the Bucks have been. And across December, they were 33% from three. In January, they're up at 39% from three. That's going to change things. But even if you just look at the guys on the season, and I don't think this is including tonight, you've got Grayson Allen shooting 39.7% on the season. Javon Carter's up to 39.3%. Brook Lopez is still above 38%. Drew Holiday is above 38% on the season. Joe Ingles is above 36%, as you mentioned. So all of a sudden, they've got like 6 key rotation guys that are shooting over 36%. It's crazy how quickly it's changed. I'm not looking forward to when they inevitably go through their multiple week rough stretch here. But yeah, we discussed
in the playoffs.
Giannis. Well, I mean, Jesus. We were discussing this the other day about Giannis and the turnovers in general. And I agree. As I was scrolling through Twitter, everyone's like, what offense? This is beautiful. And part of that is shooting the threes, but there was a lot of ball movement. There was guys flying around all over the place. And Giannis looked composed, he looked relaxed, and he looked happy to facilitate. And when we've spoke about those turnovers, particularly a lot of the offensive foul stuff, we think it's because he's pressing. And my theory has always been that he's just thought this season that he's had to do too much with the lineups that they've had out on the floor. But he just looked completely in control tonight. And it even makes guys like Javon Carter, who I don't necessarily want Javon Carter at the top of the key with 4 guys spaced out and him trying to create offense. Like, I don't like the look at that. But if he's getting the ball and he's putting the ball on the floor, zipping it to the guy in the corner, they're making the extra pass, you can see that you can get away and run pretty good offense without having necessarily a true point guard at the top. So, I mean, Carter obviously got hot there as well. But I just thought it was a really patient game from Giannis. And by the way, we should mention that dunk. That was an absolute poster. And shout out to Grayson Allen for making it happen by recognizing, I don't need to force something at the rim here. Let's get it to the freight train that's steaming behind me. And he launched from a long way away. And that was one of his better dunks for the season.
Yeah, kind of scary too. I felt like from his reaction, that he might have had like, his health flash in front of his eyes as he was going up, and then, kind of getting sideswiped sort of by the attempted charge taking. So yeah, I mean, just that was one of those extension dunks from Giannis where it was, more about how long his reach was than about how high he jumped off the ground. But again, just the kind of play you watch it and you're like, yeah, there's only one guy in the league that makes that play. And, it was scary, it was dangerous. But certainly it sounded like there were a lot of Bucks fans in the building tonight. I know Dave Kane tweeted that he felt like he was at Fiserv walking around the building before the game. So pretty cool that the Bucks, can travel that way. to Indy on a Friday night. I don't think that's the first time that's happened, by the way. But and you Kane, you had some fond stories. I mean, you and Eric have told some stories about your sometimes harrowing drives in the winter to Indiana for Bucks Pacers games. So so at least the folks that made the trip, I think it was less perilous than the night you guys drove in the fog and ice or whatever that was. But yeah, it was a good show for Bucks fans. Maybe a little hairier than they would have wanted at the end, but certainly they got some highlights, and certainly that Giannis play was as impressive as any we've seen in a little while.
Yeah, Matty Velasquez in the building. He always goes there, and I think he gets a shout out from Giannis or something when he's in the building. So, Matt, obviously former beat writer with the Journal Sentinel. He lives out that way now, so I'm pretty sure he was there again tonight as well. What did you... So, because you spoke about the offense, so it's interesting to me. What would you want the Bucks to do? So the Pacers play at an extremely high pace. And I remember even going back a few seasons ago asking, Bud the idea about the Bucks play the way they want to play. They want to shoot those threes. Bud is pretty happy for them to shoot those transition threes, those quick early shot clock threes. But it did seem to feed into what the Pacers wanted to do and how they were able to get back in the game. I think part of it is, and we've discussed this, the Bucks haven't had a great half-court offense, for the long stretches of the season. But I think they do have to be a little bit careful. And we're seeing scores like this right across the league. But they did give up 130 points to the Pistons a couple of nights ago, and they still give up 131 tonight. It did feel that the out-of-control nature of this game allowed Indiana to at least make it interesting down the stretch. And it just felt like they should have composed themselves, slowed down a little bit, because, again, we started to see some of those silly turnovers, 2 turnovers from inbound passes, Frank, 16 altogether for the night. It got a little bit messy. And I understand the complacency factor when you're up by so much, and they probably never felt like they were in huge danger. But maybe that's a situation where you could practice a little bit of control and slow it down and ensure it doesn't get that close.
Yeah, and that's where not having Middleton, I think, for the vast majority of the second half, I think, hurt too, because we've seen it, like Drew, when he gets sped up, or when there's when he's in traffic, like, I mean, Drew, as good as he is, like, he will cough it up, he will turn it over, and we saw that again tonight. And I think that's the problem with a 3-point shot, right? Like, as you said, the way that the Bucks got this big lead is, in no small part to being able to play fast, move the ball, take rhythm threes. But when you're trying to kind of, I don't want to say run out the clock, because whatever, you're not trying to run out the clock for a whole half. Like, right. Bucks know they can just outplay the Pacers there. But when a team starts to get a little bit of momentum and they start kind of junking it up a little bit, right? I mean, like, Buddy Hield was guarding Giannis at various points. I mean, he was kind of doing the hacking in the fourth quarter, but there were a few periods where Hield was the one guarding Giannis, and they had gone super small. Against the Bucks and started to make some hay. Yeah, I mean, things just kind of get funky, and even if they're like decent shots from three, again, you're setting yourself up to take early clock threes. You're setting yourself, the other team up. If they're getting rebounds, they're running out. I was shocked at cleaning the glass. They have this stat, which we've talked about, the points added in transition per 100 possessions. And I'm pretty shocked looking at the stats tonight. I know at one point the Pacers were roughly doubling the Bucks up in terms of just the raw fast break points, but I was surprised to see that the context stats for transition had the Pacers only plus 0.6 per 100 in terms of like value created by transition, and the Bucks as minus 2 points per 100 from transition. With less surprising for the Bucks, is it didn't feel like the Bucks were really like scoring so much because they were getting out in transition. But I was a little more surprised about Indiana, because it did feel like the Pacers were kind of using kind of advancing the ball quickly to kind of punish the Bucks, and kind of that helped that kind of feed their offense. But the half court offenses were terrific tonight. 112 points per 100 for the Bucks in half court tonight. Indy was 108. Those are both above 80th percentile. So, and then again, that's points per play, not points per possession. Points per possession is even higher, right? Because you're getting offensive rebounds and things like that. So that was the irony, is that, it really was the half court offense that was the big driver tonight. And overall, Bucks 34% offensive rebound rate versus 11% for Indiana. That's the second percentile. So the Bucks did a great job on the defensive glass and great job on the offensive glass too. So rebounding was definitely an area of strength for the Bucks tonight. So yeah, I mean, again, this is one of 82. I'm glad this never got as kind of hairy as it could have been. But I think there was also, a little bit of flashbacks of the Raptors game, insofar as Indiana, not necessarily always like full court 94 feet pressuring. McConnell obviously loves to apply ball pressure. He had at least one steal off an inbound from Brook, who just kind of threw it away. But trapping once, like, Drew was crossing half court, they were trying to junk it up, and obviously that was a smart play. It worked pretty well. It got the Bucks out of their comfort zone, and especially when you're trying to run clock, doing stuff like that puts you in this weird spot, because it's like, if you're doing that in the first quarter, it's like, okay, great, like, just be aggressive, and you don't really care about attacking early in the clock. But again, teams when they're in that, like, okay, we want to run some clock mindset, and then you're doubling at half court, then I think it introduces some indecision. And again, ultimately Bucks kind of figured out how to get through it and come away with another win. And I think most importantly, again, Chris Middleton, when they were, again, not at full strength, no Bobby Portis, but when they were close to that in the first half, when Chris was coming off the bench and doing his thing, they obviously looked very good. So, hopefully, it's 3 straight games where Chris has been at 15 minutes. Like,
he's frozen. Frank is frozen. I'm not sure whose internet. It could be my internet. But I would say that we've lost him. He's back. You with us? Yeah, he's having some issues. I'm not sure if you're with us, Frank, but I would say that I thought with Chris playing those 15 minutes per night, the other night I said, geez, you would love to see him play a bit more. Should he come back into the starting lineup? When is that going to happen? I am curious whether they just ride this out. Maybe he gets up to 20 at some point, but I am curious whether they just ride out this minute stuff until the All-Star break and just manage him through to there. It's probably more challenging when you're playing better teams. They should have been able to handle it tonight, and I think they did in the end. But I would say, overall, if they want to slow walk Chris Middleton to the All-Star break, I'll probably feel okay about it. I'm just more glad that we haven't seen, even though it's been not back-to-backs, but it's been a day off in between, I'm just more glad that we haven't seen him surface as questionable, or I don't want to see him on the injury report again. The Bucks have got another night off here before they play the Pelicans. But do you know what the other good thing is? It'll change. I'm sure it'll change. But the Bucks have got an interesting schedule here where they can take advantage of some teams as long as they handle their business, because there is a little bit of separation. If Kevin Durant wants to take another couple of weeks off, I'm sure that's cool, because the Nets haven't been winning a lot, and they're actually 2.5 games up now on the Nets and the Cavs there. So it's just split open a little bit there, when it looked like for a stretch that the Bucks could find themselves in 5th if they had another slip up. They were really scuffling there for a while, but 32-17, 15 games over 500. It's not bad. The Pelicans game should be fun though. They're one of my more enjoyable teams to watch. Sadly, no Dyson Daniels, Frank. That's a blow for the Aussie contingent. We're done. You still can't hear us?
I can hear you now, but this is the problem of being upstairs away from my router while my daughter built her Lego set. My internet clearly is struggling, so apologies. My internet is
Not doing well. That's the answer. Your internet is not doing well, Frank. Let's wrap this podcast up. It's the weekend. We knocked it out. The Bucks beat the Pacers 141 to 131. And I don't want to brag, but I just got given to me this morning dinner, a 3-course dinner, and tickets to the Australian Open Women's Final. So I got to get off this podcast, upload this podcast, have a shower, and walk over to the Australian Open. It's stinking hot today, but I would never go to a Grand Slam tennis final in my life because I can't afford to do that. But if it's for free, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go watch some tennis tonight. So that's my plans, Frank. I don't think you can even hear me. So let's just wrap up this podcast. Are you there, Frank?
You're talking about tennis. I caught something about tennis. You're going to see tennis for free at the Australian Open. Is that it?
That's it. Listen to the podcast, Frank, and you'll hear it. It's a great story.
Great. Fantastic. Love listening to some Kane stories that I couldn't listen to live via pod. So shout out to everybody. Happy weekend. We'll get back to you on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll be back after Bucks and the Pelicans. Hopefully Milwaukee keep it rolling. Check out the Game to Game podcast on your Locked On NBA feed. That'll have you going and keep you up to date with everything going on around the NBA. But let's leave it there. Bucks win. We're happy. Catch you on Monday.